Okay, and we are live. So good evening, everyone, or good morning, depending on which side of the world you're in. My name is Matthew Clark. I'm the Graduate Program Director of Chemical and Petroleum Engineering, and I'm going to be hosting today's presentation. Before we get started, I'm going to introduce our panelists. So as I said, I'm the Graduate Program Director for Chemical and Petroleum Engineering. I'm also an Associate Professor in the Department of Chemical Engineering. Going around the circle to my right, we have Dr. Ian Gates, who's a professor of chemical and petroleum engineering and director of the Global Research Energy Initiative, Sustainable Low Carbon Unconventional Resources. And going next, we have Jamie Olmsted, who works in the MEng office. And the next around the table, we have Meredith Conrad, an MEng graduate currently working in the business development part of Keyera, which is one of Canada's largest independent midstream energy companies.
Okay, so my name's Ian Gates. I'm a professor in chemical petroleum engineering at the University of Calgary. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, why would you want to do a MEng, a Master's of Engineering? And so if we can go to actually slide number 2, which would be the one just before this one, please. And there we go. So, there are many, many reasons why you might want to consider doing a Master's of Engineering degree. And they arise from the idea of new learnings and new beginnings with respect to career and many things about evolving yourself beyond what you are today. And, there's so many things that are happening in this world, within energy research, within chemical engineering and material science, in biomedical systems, pharmaceutical systems, and other things where, the world is rapidly evolving. And so, the incentive to take an MEng course and to complete such a degree, it's motivated by the idea of improving yourself, to learn new skills, to create new skills where maybe you pivot. So maybe you've been in an industry for many years and you want to pivot out of that industry, or it's something that you learned in your undergrad program or while during your job, and you want to get into more depth in that area. So an MEng degree fulfills those types of goals. And, so there's upgrading the skills, there's how to basically go beyond what you know so that you stand out in your job. You have new expertise which can contribute to your skill set in your existing job or to get a new job. And also in the idea of really developing your professional skills with respect to leadership and team working and other things like that. There's all of those types of skills that come out of doing an MEng. And also if we're in Alberta, so within Canada, if you want to be a professional engineer, certainly an MEng can help you on the path to getting a professional engineering designation. Could you please go to the next slide, please? So the thing is, there's different options. So there's not just one fixed format for how we operate our Masters of Engineering program. There's a diverse set of programs here, and it's a constantly evolving set of programs as we try and improve the offerings for the needs of today. And so the thing is that, we have full-time options where students are 100% focused on doing their courses, and we have part-time options where you can do it over a longer duration and then take courses as you see fit and fitting within your life and your work life, your family life, and all those things. One thing about an MEng program, there is no supervisor, so you don't have to get a research supervisor to agree to take you as a student. Being a course-based degree, it's mainly focused on taking courses. So these are courses which will help you with respect to how you want to grow. And there's many options with respect to those courses. And also the thing is that our graduates, when you look at the graduates from our program, where do they go? Well, many of them end up in industry and they evolve their careers further. And, and in fact, some of the things I've done, even within the context of my life, I have former MEng students. I remember teaching courses 10 years ago who now work in companies where we actively do research and work together today. Okay, next slide, please. So there are two basic programs in the sense of, I wouldn't say two approaches to how the Masters of Engineering degree is done. So one is what we call a course-based, or just think of it as the regular program. And in there, you know, you're going to take 10 courses, of which 6 are going to be 600 level courses. So those are graduate level courses, and the remainder 4 of them can be 500 level courses or senior undergraduate courses. With respect to subjects, the topics in there are quite varied. So you can petroleum engineering, reservoir engineering, and all the way to chemical engineering, heat and mass transfer, fluid flow reaction engineering, thermodynamics, and you know, even material science and so on. So there's a huge number of courses that you can take while supporting a course-based program. And the thing is, in that one, you know, you can take extended amount of time to do that. So it fits your life, right? So the focus on that program is something that will fit your life with respect to your work activities, your family activities, and other things. And then we have accelerated programs for those that want to really focus in on the program and get it done in a timely manner. And so those are essentially programs where there's a very clear pathway of a set of courses to essentially build your program. And right now we have an offering in this cohort-based program, which lasts 8 months in petroleum engineering, but in the next year or so, we'll be enlarging that program to other specializations, including chemical engineering and other programs. I'll let you now go to Matthew, please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gates. So as Dr. Gates was mentioning, we have many parallels, possible streams for the MEng in chemical and petroleum engineering. If you take an MEng in chemical and petroleum engineering, you have to choose one of a handful of specializations. We have the chemical engineering specialization, petroleum engineering specialization, energy and environment, and reservoir characterization. Now, the chemical engineering and the petroleum engineering are pretty self-explanatory to those who are here, but I will elaborate on them a little bit shortly. Energy and environment is a mixture of environmental engineering as well as some energy engineering. So looking at renewable energy, looking at various aspects of environmental engineering, such as air pollution, water pollution. Reservoir characterization is somewhat tangential to petroleum engineering. You can think of it as, I don't want to necessarily say an advanced version of petroleum engineering, but a somewhat specialized version of petroleum engineering that gets you exposed to the reservoir characterization aspect of it, where you're looking at, for example, the geostatistics and the reservoir simulation. So regardless of which specialization you're taking, there's a number of courses that the department offers. And this list up here is just a selection of some of the ones that just came to mind. So if you're in environmental engineering or chemical engineering, for example, you might want to take wastewater treatment, machine learning. We have a course related to machine learning and the energy engineering. Our petroleum reservoir simulation course is a very highly regarded course, which is often taught by a world-renowned expert in that field, Dr. Chen. We've got courses in air pollution. We've got a very unique process simulation course in which you would actually get to design and build a process simulator. Drilling courses, geostatistics, and then we've got courses that touch on the core chemical and petroleum engineering fundamentals, such as thermodynamics, mass transfer, electrochemistry. You can also take some of the more professional development courses, which you would touch on in the likes of petroleum economics, and then we've got sustainability courses as well. So there's something for everyone within the Department of Chemical and Petroleum Engineering, regardless of which stream you're going into. So can we go to the next slide, please? So what industries will you work in? Well, I got a slide, about 6 or 7 slides here, and I'm not going to go through every bullet point. I'm just going to highlight some of the ones which our graduates have gone into after receiving MEngs. So renewable energy is one which is very popular nowadays with students. So we've got the likes of biofuels, wind energy, solar energy. So if you're in the energy and environment stream, or even in the chemical engineering stream, these are certainly fields which will become accessible to you. Can we go to the next slide, please? Biomedical engineering and pharmaceuticals is another sector which our chemical engineering graduates in particular can go into. We've got the likes of bioreactor design, people working with biomedical equipment, novel drug delivery methods, and in some cases, vaccine developments as well. Now, can we go to the next slide, please? The petrochemical industry is a very large employer. Historically, has employed many of our graduates. We have people working in all aspects of the petrochemical industry, both in the upstream and the downstream sectors. So ranging all the way from the reservoir, all the way up to the refinery and into the pipeline aspects as well. Now, coming into the modern day, we don't just specialize in the reservoir engineering aspects, but also we're getting into the likes of carbon capture, underground gas storage, for example, as well. So we've got people who can give expertise in things like carbon capture as well as underground hydrogen storage. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So another area where our graduates get employed is the agri-food industry. So looking at the likes of fertilizer production, food production. This is a reasonably large employer in the local area as well. Now, can we go to the next slide, please? Now, coming to the likes of clean water, this is a very big industry, regardless of whether you're in the petrochemical industry or if you're working in energy or many other industries. Clean water is something which is vital to the smooth functioning of many processes. So water treatment, reclamation, biofiltration, for example, these are all subjects which you'll get exposure to in our program. Can we go to the next slide, please? Another possible employer for graduates of our program is related to synthetic materials. So the likes of polymers, textiles, ceramics. So again, these touch on basic core chemical engineering principles. And can we go to the next slide, please? Finally, the next big sector where people have gotten jobs historically from our graduates has been metals. So the likes of manufacturing, iron and steel, metal refining, mining, for example, electroplating. These are all also possible employers for our graduates. Now, with that said, we'll go to the next slide and I'll hand the floor over to Meredith.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. I just wanted to take a couple minutes and talk a bit about my experience with the MEng degree and a bit about the career and where I'm working now. So right now I've been working in the engineering field for about 10 years. I'm a licensed professional engineer and I got my MEng from the University of Calgary in 2018. I'm currently working in a business development role with Keyera Energy, which is a midstream company, as I mentioned in the beginning. So midstream companies are really in the business of owning all the infrastructure required to get energy from point of production to the end user. So we own compressor stations and pipelines and gas plants. We own frac towers and underground storage caverns. It's really a chemical engineer's dream because you get to work with all these different pieces of large infrastructure and pretty much use everything you've learned in university. My job within the company is to manage the business of some of these large pieces of infrastructure. So Keyera likes to hire engineers to do these jobs because we understand how everything works and we understand how to keep things running for the business. I've been in this role for about 2-3 years. Prior to this, I was actually working in the power industry. I was building power plants. So I was with a smaller company that built power plants to convert flare gas to power. We did some biomass plants. We looked at wind and solar investments. And we looked at combined heat and power and cogeneration. And it was in this time, I was probably about 2-3 years out of school when I joined this company. And I started to realize that there was probably a knowledge gap left over from my undergrad. You know, you get into 4th year chemical engineering and the courses are just starting to get good because they're starting to get exciting. And then all of a sudden your degree is done. And so I started to look at the MEng program at U of C because as they've talked about, there's a lot of different courses you can take on your own schedule. They've got that layer of flexibility in there. And I was looking forward to the opportunity to diving deeper into some of these elements that really intrigued me, or maybe I hadn't learned enough about yet. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I decided to start doing my MEng part-time for two reasons. One was the flexibility of it. So I wanted to keep my job, but I wanted to obviously keep learning, get a better education. And U of C gave that flexibility. I was able to do my whole degree with evening courses. I never had to take time off work, and it really was very synergistic with the career I was working at the time. The second reason I decided to enroll in the program is because it was very highly regarded downtown. And by downtown, I just mean within industry here in Calgary, but also with really cities across Canada. What you'll notice about U of C is that a lot of the professors are very ingrained with industry, and a lot of the research they're doing, or maybe side jobs they're working, are actually for big energy companies or mining companies, or really any of those industries that Dr. Clark covered there on the last couple of slides. And so it was because of that, I decided to enroll. The first two courses I got to take were natural gas processing principles and natural gas processing technology, which doesn't sound exciting, but it's actually really cool. I got to spend a whole year diving into how a gas plant is designed and built, and how to troubleshoot one and how to operate one. I got to take a couple other courses that were really exciting. What stands out to me was petroleum economics, which Dr. Clark had mentioned on a previous slide, because we really don't get a lot of that in your undergrad. Like, it was just an opportunity to dive deeper into something that's so important to understand, really, no matter what industry you're going to work in. It's important to understand how the economics of that tie together. I got to take a project management course towards the end of the degree, which was very helpful in my current role now, where we have teams of project managers that I get to work with every day, and it's very helpful to be able to speak their language. So it was a really positive experience for me. It certainly helped my career. It helped me land the job I'm in today. And I guess the last thing I would say about it is that across Canada, the place to be for chemical engineering is Calgary. So it only makes sense to do the degree here at the U of C, because there are a lot of chemical engineers employed in this city. So with that, I guess it's back to you, Matt.
Great, thank you, Meredith. We're going to now switch gears, and we're going to talk about the University of Calgary in general and living in Calgary. So the University of Calgary is one of Canada's largest universities. We've got, as you can see there, 3,500 undergraduate students in the engineering faculty, and roughly 1,400 graduate students and 170 faculty. With this, this large number of faculty comes strong ties to industry, as well as you can see, $30 million in research funding. And the strong ties from industry are advantageous with students. Students often can leverage often can make connections via the professors in terms of making connections with local industries. So can we go to the next slide, please? And I'll hand it, I guess, back to Ian.
Yeah, so, in many areas, Calgary is leading, with respect to, especially because we have massive oil and gas industry and petrochemicals industry here in Alberta, but also really in more broad view, petrochemicals, energy research, material science, and so on, and rapidly growing biomedical industry, as well as a data science industry. So there's a huge amount of things that are going on. So when you look at the University of Calgary, with respect to its research, it's very linked to industry and to how it's, solving relevant problems and training our students to be able to handle those problems as problem solvers, critical thinkers, and so on. So right now, when you look at UCalgary, and if you were to look at the website and look at the type of research that we do and how the links are with industry, you'll find that a lot of our research is motivated by industry and is partnered also with industry. The next slide, please. I guess I'll continue because I'll do the next two. So yeah, so Calgary, you know, it's the engineering headquarters for Canada. So we have the highest density of engineers in Canada in one city here. And, you know, so there's a massive population of engineers that work and breathe engineering, and not just for Canada and not just for Alberta, really for the world. We have engineering teams in companies that work for global engineering corporations that work on projects across the planet, solving all kinds of different and designing all kinds of different equipment for all kinds of different industries. So Calgary, definitely among the number one, is a beautiful city to live in. Amazing summers, blue skies, green, and mountains right next door. An amazing place to live. And, you know, I have to admit, you know, I've been here since '81, and I've lived in a few cities since, you know, being in Calgary from that time, and definitely love Calgary for all of its outdoor pursuits, its adherence to nature. The water tastes wonderful here, and the sunshine is awesome, even in the winter. So we do get cold winters, but that blue sky is amazing. So Calgary, a wonderful place to live. You know, with respect to Calgary, you know, there's a huge amount of things that are evolving in Calgary. So right now, yes, energy is changing. The nature of energy, the nature of how we think of energy is changing. And, you know, of course, Alberta and Calgary in particular, and the University of Calgary is stepping up to the plate in trying to understand, you know, how to do this in an effective way that works within the current context of business. You know, so that is to do it in a way where it's both economic and also reasonable, and yet is, you know, it's affordable, and it lowers carbon emissions and other things. So Calgary is an immense amount of energy. There's an immense amount of energy with respect to how things are transitioning, you know, not just, you know, with respect to moving to renewables, but also within even fossil fuel itself. So, you know, many of the energy transitions we see are within these energy industries, and you see huge amount of technological change within the oil and gas industry. And one thing about an MEng program that is so you know, attractive is that it brings you up to date with a lot of those trends that are happening, and you know, the changes that we see, how the digital science world is changing how we think of energy and fossil fuel, renewables, and the integration of the entire thing. So Calgary has an immense amount of research and discovery and innovation, and it's continuing. Am I doing this one?
Sure, go for it, Ian.
Okay, I'm going to do it. so I'll just, so the thing is, you know, with respect to the training that you get in your MEng, you're definitely learning the latest and the greatest, the state of the art of where these, where, you know, the chemical engineering or the petroleum engineering research and science and technology is. In all of our courses, we use the current state-of-the-art simulators for our work. You know, we also, in anything that has to do with industry, so in many of our grad courses, we include industry components. So we have industry speakers that come in and talk at some of our lectures. And certainly there's a sense of, you know, that making sure the students are aware of what is happening, because industry is changing so much. Now, it's an internationally recognized degree, so UW Calgary is fully accredited, and certainly everything you do would go towards your PEng status, your professional engineering status within Canada. Our fees are very competitive globally, and so, and also living costs. We're a very affordable city within Canada and within the world, and a beautiful place to be. And our facilities, and you've seen probably in some of the photos within these slides, our engineering building, the new part of it is less than 5 years old. It's about 5 years old, and it's an amazing facility for learning and teaching. And of course, we're using, in this day and age of COVID, all kinds of tools to do remote teaching to enhance learning. And also the other side of it is there's an industry that surrounds us that is rapidly changing. And, you know, so there are job opportunities there for especially folks who want to pivot or learn more or specialize and grow their career options. And now I'm going to hand it to Meredith.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, so career success, we've touched on this a bit, but Calgary does have the highest concentration of engineers in Canada. I've worked in a couple other cities and I can tell you, you just feel at home being in Calgary because everyone's like you, because we all have that engineering background. There's also a huge tech market here. The number of tech companies coming out of Calgary that are just growing right here in Calgary and raising a lot of money and hiring a lot of people has been great as well. And I think they start here because there's just good talent in the city. So it's just a great place to be, highly educated and skilled workforce. And as we've touched on, it's really just the epicenter of energy here in Canada.
So Meredith touched on all the tech companies and all the innovation which is within Calgary. And as a result of that, the University of Calgary, in its relatively short history, being only a university since the mid-1960s, has become one of the world's top 200 universities. It's one of the highest ranked research universities in Canada. We've got a large number of research chairs. And as you can see, in 2017, for example, we had 360 new inventions and innovations. Or sorry, that's since 2017. Can we go to the next slide, please? Now, the University of Calgary is a fairly large university. We've got a total of 32,000 full-time students, and it's spread out over 526 acres of campus space. And the main campus has a large amount of green space, as you saw in the previous slide. The buildings are distributed in what's essentially a parkland with a lot of trees, a lot of open green space. We have a lot of playing fields. We have a large recreation center. For example, we have a weight room, a very big weight room. We have an Olympic-sized swimming pool. We have indoor running tracks, and we're probably the only university in Canada. In fact, we are the only university in Canada that can boast as having its own indoor speed skating rink. So when you're in Calgary, in addition to gaining your international work experience that you might gain from your internship, you can take a break in one of our fantastic recreation facilities. So I'll hand it over to Jamie now for the next slide.
Hi everyone, so I'm going to kind of touch on our admission requirements for the MEng office, as well as like living on campus. More recently, we just built a new Crow's Nest Hall. This is a beautiful building. There's a Starbucks right downstairs, so you can just zip on down to get your coffee or tea. We also have family residences. So we have a selection of townhouses that are right on campus for any of our students that have families that they're bringing with us from overseas. Next slide, please. These two links, if you guys want to take these down, are kind of essentially a cost of living calculator. So you can put into there what you're looking to get the cost of for living in Calgary. And it will give you kind of an estimated generator of what it's going to cost you while you're here, including the tuition as well. Next slide, please. So we do have an international student services team. They can be contacted via email for any type of inquiries you have related to visa, study permit, arriving currently with this pandemic. We have like quarantine plans. So the ISS Center can help you with all these types of inquiries. They also do a lot of workshops in regards to international students. So it's very helpful when you're trying to obtain your visa. They can help you with questions in regards to your application. Next slide, please. So this is the deadlines for our programs. If you're wishing to come in for a September 1 intake, you need to have your application completed by April 15th. And if you're looking for a winter intake, which is January 1st, applications are due August 15th. Next slide, please. So these are our English language requirements. For international students, we require a TOEFL, an IELTS, or currently right now we are accepting a Duolingo test. These are the scores that you would need to have a minimum requirement of in order to be eligible to apply. We can't say that in the future that the Duolingo may be offered, but at this time for the upcoming terms, it is a way of getting past the TOEFL and the IELTS, because right now it's not easy to get in-person tests. Next slide, please. This is the tuition links. So we get a lot of questions in regards to tuition and how that's paid. So if you would like to take this link down here, this will take you directly to our tuition page. For the course-based students, you're going to be paying per course. So if you're looking to estimate your fees, it will depend on how many courses that you're planning to take during the term. So say, for instance, if you're registering for 3 courses, you're going to have to estimate based on what is put in our link here, as well as the general fees assessed to you per term. So you'll be paying a general fee each term on top of what your tuition is for your course fees, as well as the cost of your textbooks. Next slide. We also have a health and dental program that is part of your admission. So what will happen is when you are enrolled in the program, you will receive information regarding the health and dental. If you already have existing coverage, and we'll kind of touch this in a future slide, but you may be eligible to opt out of this if you do not want to take our health and dental services. However, this is a very good program for our students, especially coming from international locations where they may not have the healthcare that they're looking to have here in Canada. So these are kind of our basic admission requirements. So for eligibility criteria, you're going to need a minimum of a 3.0 and a 4-point system scale. That's over the past 2 years of your undergrad. So you're going to be counting back those last 2 years or 60 units without splitting a term to determine your eligibility for this program. If your scores are in a different system other than this one, for example, India is on a 20-point scale, we suggest that you do not convert your GPA, simply keep your GPA as it is in your country. And we have a system to recognize what it converts to for us. You will also need to, you will also need to obtain at least a 4-year bachelor degree in chemical or petroleum engineering or a closely related field. Thank you. Next slide, please. So we are admitting on a rolling offer basis. So what this does mean is as soon as there is a qualified application and it is completed and it's submitted to our office, we are going to start reviewing that right away. It may take anywhere between 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how extensive the application is and the review that we have to do on it. Sometimes, depending on certain institutions, we may have to do a little bit of digging to review your credentials to ensure that they are applicable to this program. Once the program is full, after we've processed these rolling offers, the applications will close, even if it's before our final deadline. So we are getting several questions in regards to why our applications are closed when the deadline is the April 15th. This is the reason, because we have filled the quota of the program. So we don't want to continue taking applications if we're not able to take those applicants. Next slide, please. Official transcripts. So in regards to your official transcripts, we get many questions if they need to be submitted for their graduate application. You do not need to have these transcripts for the evaluation period. During this period, we will use the unofficial documents that you've uploaded to your online application to evaluate your application, because we do understand that it does cost money for you to send these official documents to us in the event that you may not receive an admission. So you will see that this is still reflected in your checklist when you apply. However, don't worry, your application will still be reviewed with the unofficial copies. If you are admitted to the program, we will request those documents of you. Next slide, please. This relates to documents that may be required to be translated. So if you are having an official transcript that is in your foreign language, we will need also a copy of a translated copy of your transcripts. If you do choose to get this done, what you will need to do is go to an official notary to translate these documents. Once they have translated the documents, they will need to put both documents back in a sealed envelope, and they will need to be signed off by that notary to ensure that they are an official sealed documents. Next slide, please. For international students, if you are applying for a study permit, you need to indicate this on your application, because if you are a permanent resident of your own country, this doesn't necessarily mean you're a permanent resident here. We do get this a lot as students do apply as permanent resident because they think it means of their own country. However, if you do not have permanent residency here in Canada or hold a valid study permit, you need to select study permit when you do process your admission, just to ensure that we are making sure that you're enrolled in the right program. We do know that you're an international student. You can actually take that email down at the bottom of the slide there for more information on some of these international requirements. Next slide, please. And now we're going to go to the Q&A session. This will be with all the panelists, and Matthew will kind of lead the charge here. All right.
I'm going to open the floor to questions to the attendees. Feel free to either type your questions in the chat, or if you want to make yourself visible, certainly feel free to do that. And we'll just open the floor to any questions you might have for any of the panelists. Use the Q&A function. Oh, sorry, you can use, there's a Q&A function now in Zoom that you can use as well. First question, why should I come to U Calgary for my master's over another uni? Who wants to take this one? Dr. Gates?
Well, it depends on you know, what you want to do, but certainly with respect to engineering and with respect to chemical and petroleum engineering, and you know, given the rich industry base we have here in Calgary, it makes a lot of sense to do a Master's of Engineering here in Calgary, because you know, a lot of what we do, our courses and our interactions are rooted in industry and application of what we're teaching. So there's certainly that base there. And the other one is the potential for jobs after that. So, you know, that would certainly make a strong case for coming to Calgary rather than to other schools. I see in Q&A, can mechanical engineers enroll in this program? How about Matthew? I'll hand that to you.
Yeah. Okay, I was just typing the answer, but since you put me on the spot. So with regards to mechanical engineers can almost always get direct admission to certain specializations, particularly petroleum engineering, energy and environment, and reservoir characterization. Now, for chemical engineering specialization, it's usually looked at on a case-by-case basis. Some mechanical engineering programs have adequate coverage in the necessary undergraduate courses. Sometimes they don't, and if that is the case, what happens is then you would have to do a few undergraduate classes. Now, in the case of mechanical engineers, if you did have to be assessed, we call them makeup classes. Typically, it's only one or two that you would be missing from your undergraduate career. Usually mechanical engineers have a pretty easy time to get into the program. It's usually similar enough to chemical engineers that it can be almost always direct admissions. Okay, I see a question from Meredith. So Meredith, can you tell us how hard it was to get your job? And what is the difference in reputation between MEng and a master's degree in science? So maybe I'll answer the second one, and Meredith, you can talk about the job part.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, you have to work to get a job. Everyone always is surprised at how hard it is to get a job, regardless of industry, regardless of what you're doing. It takes a lot of work. It's almost a full-time job in and of itself. But going through a program like this gives you the skills and the confidence to apply for the jobs that interest you, right? So for this job, it probably took, I don't know, 6 months of searching and applying to other things and talking to different people and using my network. Fortunately, my network was bigger because I had gone through this MEng program and I had met other working professionals who were doing things part-time. And eventually ended up where I am now. I can say that the couple people I work for have explicitly stated that they like that I have my master's. It speaks to the level of technical education I have, especially in a business development role. So that's been helpful. But at the end of the day, you got to do everything you can to prepare yourself to get the kind of job you want.
Okay. Now Meredith made an important point that about being networking, but she also brought up that if you put in the effort, it can pay off. And I want to add to that an experience that I saw in one of my groups. I recently had an international graduate student come from Venezuela. He knew no one in Calgary, but he made it his mission to meet people and to network. And by the time he was done his program, he had a job lined up. So it's very important. Now, the next question that was in the chat, I'll answer. And this is the difference in reputation between the MEng and the Masters of Science degrees. Now, I don't think to most people working in industry, there's going to be necessarily a difference in reputation between the two degrees. What there is, though, is in some respects, they give you different options in terms of career options. Now, both of them do have a lot of overlap. A lot of people with a Master's of Science go into similar jobs to what Meredith's working. Where the Master's of Science differs is that it's also seen as a stepping stone into a PhD, whereas typically a Master's of Engineering is what we call a terminal degree. People typically don't use it as a stepping stone into a PhD. So a Master's is something which a Master's of Science is a degree path that you would take if you're interested in research. Okay, let's see the next question. So next question, how well does this program prepare you for a leadership role in an organization? Now I'm gonna bounce this one back to Meredith since she probably
yeah, it definitely helps you prepare for a leadership type role because of a couple of reasons. One, it gives you really the technical background to stand on, right? And it gives you the experience you need to know what you're talking about. But two, I always joke, it taught me how to multitask. And if you want to be a leader, you've got to juggle a lot of different priorities. And taking a degree like this, like it's not an easy degree to have. So to put yourself through this, whether it's part-time or full-time, takes a lot of good skills, and that's highly transferable to a leadership role.
Okay, thank you, Meredith. Next question is, are exceptions made for the 3.0 GPA if you have a lot of work experience? So if you have a lot of work experience and your GPA is slightly below the 3.0, we can certainly make exceptions for your entrance GPA. Again, those have to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. So if that was the case, you would want to contact me or contact the MEng office before we even look at your application. I can certainly give you an assessment before you go and submit something. Okay, next question is, do I need to find a supervisor for this graduate program? Is there funding available? So as Dr. Gates mentioned, this differs from the Masters of Science in that you don't have to find a supervisor. Now, strictly speaking, actually, I'm your supervisor, but unlike the Masters of Science, you don't have to knock on people's doors and try to find someone who has similar research interests and who also has funding available. Regarding funding, these are typically self-funded positions. Students take them on their own. So because there's no supervisor involved, it's very seldom is there funding available for the MEng. Now, Jamie, you can probably speak on the current state of scholarships. I think there are a few that Canadians can apply for. I know they can apply for some of the program recommended awards, for example. Jamie, maybe you know of some other ones off the top of your head they can apply for.
Yeah, so the MEng course-based students are eligible for the graduate the GAC awards essentially and special awards. So you are eligible to apply for those. A lot of the program deadlines have already passed for this year. But if you reach out to us, I can provide you with more information on the specific rewards that you'd be eligible for.
And then the next question, I'm also going to bounce back to Jamie. Can I do this program part-time?
Yeah, so it really is dependent on which program you do select. There is many of the MEng programs that you can take part-time, but for an example, our Petroleum cohort or our software engineering program, you would not be eligible to take as a part-time student.
And then the next two, I'm going to also bounce back to Jamie. The first question is, what is the average tuition for an international student? And then the second question is, how many seats do you have for September?
Okay, so for the average tuition, most of the programs are 30 units. So you'll be taking essentially 10 courses that are 3 units a course. Typically for an international student, those courses will cost about $1,700 per course. You will also be paying general fees, which is around $300 to $400 mark, and this covers your UPass, the health and dental, as well as athletic fees and any fees that are related to your program. So basically an estimate would be that $1,700 plus your general fees that is assessed based on how many terms that you've been there. Meredith may be able to touch on this a little more of what hers costed, but she is also a domestic student.
It was cheaper domestically. It's quite affordable, actually. It was pretty easy.
Yeah. And then as for how many seats do we have for September, I can't really give you a ballpark in this. We have certain quotas that are set out for each term that we intake. But if you want to reach out to us at MEng at Calgary, we can give you a little more specific as to how many seats are left for these programs. The chemical and petroleum still has quite a few seats that can be filled.
And the number of seats available it depends on each specialization. So each specialization, be it petroleum or chemical, they'll have a different quota.
Absolutely.
Okay. So do we have any last questions from the attendees?
Yeah, just give you a couple more minutes here if you have any last minute things.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any last questions. So with that being said, we'll wrap the, oh, no, there is one last question. This is like teaching. This always seems to happen too when I'm trying to. So the question goes to Dr. Gates. What can I do in research with an MEng?
Well, I think it's, with respect to an MEng, you're certainly learning new skills that you probably didn't learn in your bachelor's and enriching what you know. And, you certainly in those courses will be exposed to more details that should promote some sense of, research within you. It's likely it'll happen afterwards. So, I'll give you 2 examples. One of my former MEng students from 10 years ago is now the CEO of Proton Technologies, a company that we co-founded. And so he was a former MEng student who we just got to know each other quite well through time, and through our interests. We're very interested in hydrogen and other things. And through that, we formed a company, and now it does all kinds of things, and it's emerging and growing every day. And another one of my other MEng students, we actually started working together out of an MEng course on reservoir simulation. And from that led to a consulting business that led to a bigger business that we sold to Schlumberger in 2013. And since then, we're on company number 4. So the thing is, what I'm really trying to say, the point is that an MEng is something that enriches you, that opens doors for doing all kinds of things. And it may be not pure research, but the thing is, it may be applied research in the sense of an industrial setting where you will design things to solve technical challenges. And that's what keeps us all going in what we do.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Gates. So we're going to wrap things up on that note. So again, I'd just like to thank the panelists. So Dr. Gates, Jamie, Meredith, as well as the members of Schulich School who were in the background organizing and making everything go smooth. And again, if any of the attendees or any of the people watching the recording of this have questions, certainly feel free to reach out to the MEng office at the U Calgary. Jamie, perhaps you could repeat the email address?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is just meng at ucalgary.ca. So definitely reach out to us first and we can facilitate your questions. Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone.